This panel will be moderated by Winnie Lau, who's the president of Block Tower Capital. Winnie, what? Oh.
No, it's good. Just predicting. Getting ready for tomorrow.
Cool. Well, hey everyone, great to see you all. Super excited to be here today to talk about the future consumer brands as they think about Web3, and that really spans from direct-to-consumer brands, luxury fashion houses, sports brands, media, and different IP. So over the last 2 years, we've begun to see a lot of larger brands, experiment with crypto. Names like Nike, Gucci, the NBA, and they're doing it in very novel ways. Consumers are spending more and more time online, and younger generations, many of you all here today, have begun to develop a very intertwined digital and physical identity. As such, we've brought here today an amazing group of panelists to discuss how brands are thinking about Web3 and emerging use cases around loyalty, co-creation, engagement, and digital and physical goods. I'll let our panelists, Ty, Porter, and Rocky, introduce themselves and what they're each building. Maybe like 1 or 2 sentences each.
Me and Oliver.
Yeah.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Penn Blockchain and Winnie for having me. So I'm Porter Grieve, co-founder and CEO of Mercury. Really quick background on myself. I spent 6 years at AS Roma on the professional sports side. I wasn't playing, unfortunately, but working. Before founding this in technology and strategy. What we do at Mercury is we are building the, as we call it, the future of the fan experience and the on-chain fan identity. So right now we're exclusively focused on college athletic departments and collegiate sports teams. So on one end we partner with universities and college sports programs, and the other we partner with college athletes to deliver fans experiences they can't get anywhere else, and then give them the digital verification to prove that they did that thing forever.
Cool. I'm Ty Haney. I'm the co-founder and CEO of TYB, which stands for Try Your Best. And we have a Web3 loyalty and rewards platform that allows brands to directly incentivize their fan base for valuable actions. And prior to TYB, I spent 8 years in the direct-to-consumer space building a brand called Outdoor Voices, and very excited about bringing Web3 to consumer. The headline for me is offering direct-to-consumer brands a better business model than being structurally reliant on ad platforms. We'll get into that a little bit more, but excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hi everyone, I'm Rocky Miller, CEO at Mojito. So Mojito is a all-in-one platform for bringing brands and creatives into Web3. So we engage in commerce utility as well as token-gated access, memberships, and rewards. So yeah, that's a lot, obviously. Our genesis has been with Sotheby's, who we brought to market, and the Sotheby's Metaverse. So a lot of infrastructure that was built around commerce and payments that we've now evolved into memberships and token-gated access. So my background, I've been over 20 plus years, giving my age away a little bit, in finance. So I've spent my entire career in picks and shovel businesses, whether it was at Goldman Sachs building out trading systems, or at my own startup building out crypto systems. And so what I really love about what we're building in Mojito, and like really what everyone's building here, is the picks and shovels of the Web3 framework and bringing Web 2 into Web 3. So I think that's what excites me the most, this new paradigm, this new experiment, and yeah, I'd love to talk more.
Yeah, I guess to get us started, as you guys think about the future consumer brands, what do you think about, what excites you about the power of Web 3 to disrupt like new consumer behaviors, business models, purchasing patterns? What are you most excited about?
I think, just to stay in my lane here, I'll talk about sports quickly. Thing that excites me most is, for sports, I think fans, you choose your favorite team. Let's take the Eagles for a second, at age 5, and then you let them, ruin your life for 30 plus years. So fandom is it's so integral to so many people and so much of what they do, but every single day, every time you engage, every time you buy a ticket, buy memorabilia, the brand, the Eagles in this case, are earning there, and they're extracting that value. But as a consumer, you should be building that identity over time, and I should be able to look at someone and say, I know you're an Eagles fan, and I know you're the 120th biggest Eagles fan in the world, and because of 30 years of history, and this is why. And that doesn't exist yet, and I think that's crazy. So I think giving fans the tools to earn and build and own their fan identity over time And then on the actual brand, the sports team side, the benefit there is like they get to really understand who their most engaged audience members are, their most engaged fans, and really reward that top 20% of their fan base that is really driving 80% of the value.
Yeah, for me, it's ownership and ownership on the fan side. I think with Outdoor Voices, we had this super engaged, passionate fan base, many thousands of people that we called Team OV that were this distributed network of essentially fans, customers, ambassadors that on a local level would bring the brand to life. I also realized that the direct-to-consumer model is not direct, and so we would spend 30 to 40% of our dollars raised on Facebook and Instagram to acquire non-sticky, one-and-done customers. And so I think 5 to 10 years from now, what I get excited about is the idea that the next Nike can be truly owned by the fan base. And so community-founded, community-owned, and community-run. And I think we're going to have to be really methodical in terms of the progressive decentralization for that structure to work. But ultimately, not only is direct-to-consumer not direct, the direct-to-consumer VC-funded model doesn't work out well for founders and fans. And so a small, group of people that ultimately have the dollars to give to kind of these upstarts are the ones that win in the end, and I think that model changing is what I'm excited about, having lived through that. And so we're really focused on this new model that we're calling community integrated commerce. We'll talk more on that.
Yeah, so at Mojito we started with commerce as a use case in the art space, which is huge. The Web3 technology gives true sense of ownership. There are a lot of actual hurdles that art houses and auction houses go through that Web3 technology solves. So I think really there's an evolution of getting into Web3, and we have to solve real-world problems for real-world businesses. And in the art space, it's pretty obvious. It's easy to understand. It's provenance, it's ownership, and there's nothing better than Web3. That's why that market has taken off. The other use cases we're seeing more and more of that we're interested in is asset-backed, asset-backed tokens, if you will. So redeemables, digital twins. So again, a real-world problem is logistics. It's how do I know I'm buying the thing that is real? How is this item liquid? So instead of Nike giving away their secondary market to something like StockX, which is Nike sees nothing of, the creators see nothing of, NFTs and Web3 technology allow for secondary market liquidity where there wasn't any before. So there are some real-world use cases that at the Mojito side we're really focused on to unblock and really bring this technology to life by solving real-world problems that they have. And I think that the evolution of that is exactly what my friends here are talking about is community-owned commerce and community-owned brand engagement that will just come as an offshoot of that.
Yeah, and I feel like, sorry, you were going to say?
I was just going to say, kind of tied to what both of you guys were saying, we have to start very simply, so I think of it as proof of fan. And so showing that you're a fan of the Eagles for 20 years, and kind of in the Outdoor Voices case, we had this blue Doing Things hat, a physical hat that people could get by coming and showing up to one of the events. You had to participate in the mission, move your body, we called it Doing Things, sweat, enjoy it, hopefully, and you got this blue Doing Things hat, and then you'd be on the trail or a yoga class and you'd have this physical thing, and it really represented your belonging to this community, same as kind of a fan club. That very simply and obviously to me becomes something that's digital, lives in a wallet, and unlocks perks. But I think, and I'm curious to get kind of your guys' thoughts on this, we have to start so simply because it's such a new behavior, and the moment that I walk into a brand's, marketing room, and whether it's enterprise or SMB, the word blockchain comes up, and they're like, nope. And so we have a lot of work to do,
yeah.
right? They're allergic, yeah.
Yeah, I guess almost like in the short term, I see like 5 immediate product archetypes. You have your digital and physical bundles and experiences, kind of what Mercury's doing. You have your token-gated, like chat rooms experiences. You have token-enabled focus groups, which is what Joggy's doing on TYB. There's engagement, loyalty, rewards, and then co-creation. What do you think Web3 unlocks in the future at end state? Like right now, you mentioned what you do today. But in the future, what do you think are some use cases that people haven't really discussed yet that excites you?
In terms of what excites me, I think I'm actually less excited about what existing legacy consumer brands are doing to get into the space and how they're approaching it. There's a few elements there that do excite me, but I think what excites me most is brands that are emerging based around this technology and this culture. So I think Joggy is an example. Could have existed separately, but I think in its current state couldn't have existed without the Web3 technology that it utilized to have the community sort of created and create value. Another example I'll use is I don't know how many of you are familiar with Pool Suite. Honestly, I'm not even that familiar with it. I don't even know what they do half the time. It's just cool. It's like
very
it's more of a vibe than a company. Like they're a radio station, then they're a sunscreen brand, and they got a newsletter. And whenever I see it on my feed, I stop and I'm like, I feel left out. I want to be involved there. And I just think they've done an incredible job of leveraging not just Web3 technology, but Web3 culture to build what I hope is a lasting, formative, differentiated brand.
Yeah, and I think like co-creation, kind of what Pool Suite is doing, is an emerging theme within Web3, right? So you have co-creation across science, research, media, gaming, as well as commerce. I think, Ty, a question for you is, recently I'm in the Joggies community. I recently voted in a few surveys on the TYB platform, and that then led to the formulation of a new energy drink that got sent to me. I thought that was pretty freaking magical and cool. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about how you guys think, more about the platform, what you guys think of co-creation, and how you imagine different brands like Nike, like Joggies, D2C brands kind of leverage that?
Yeah, for me, the future of brand building is two-part. It's about co-creation and incentivization. And so next to kind of building TYB, the platform, we incubated a brand called Joggy. So a from zero brand. It's clean energy, think the baby sister and replacement over time to Red Bull with clean, good for you ingredients. But ahead of launching the brand or ever selling a product, we sold 500 Joggy Doggy collectibles. And they're these little animated, cute dog that catches a Frisbee that says Joggy. And so this was very experimental, but sold 500 Joggy Doggies for $250 each. This was last April. It came with a suite of perks. The headline perk was access into the community channel where I could start to co-create and give my preferences or insight on product. And so over the course of the last 7 months, we've developed the Joggy energy drink in partnership with this group, so Joggy Doggy holders. And so one thing that's super important is that there has to be a vision when you think about co-creation. It's not just like up for grabs, tell us what to make. But we set the goals, we set the vision, and then allowed the community really to power, focus group type insights and preferences that really have helped us refine to this version of the product that came out only accessible to Joggy holders 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, got in my mail.
Yeah, and I think co-creation, is broader than just from a product development use case. Co-creation to me is really just about empowering trusted fans to bring the brand to life in their own kind of unique way. And there's a really interesting essay by this guy, Toby Shorin, called Headless Brands. And I really think what excites me is this idea that brands in the near and kind of future state are not going to be just like one face and kind of one look and feel, but rather it on a local level, Outdoor Voices or Nike looks and feels very different based on how that essentially, fan with stake in the game wants to bring it to life. And so that's what I get excited about, is really this distributed representation of a brand that I think ultimately becomes way more powerful than, tops down direction.
Yeah.
If I could just add one thing,
Yeah.
I'm really glad you said, set a vision, set goals, and then let the community sort of work towards those goals. I think what a lot of brands have made the mistake of doing was sort of set up a community and then make it a free-for-all.
Yeah.
I think Outdoor Voices, amazing brand, but I'm sure you guys had normal customer support issues on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. Someone got the wrong shirt or someone got the wrong shorts, and normally that's an amazing chance to sort of create deeper engagement and loyalty with that person who had an issue and then fix that issue on a one-off basis. But if you put all those people in a group chat,
totally,
and then they're like, hey, you all had this issue too? Hang on, maybe there's a lawsuit here. And that's where you have to be very careful. So it's like, okay, here's what we're doing as a group, and here's what this community is for. Now let's work towards that collaboratively instead of, you're all here, let us know what you want to do with this company.
I also don't think chat is ultimately the number one tool for community building, and like
Yeah.
everyone's in Discord, every brand's like madly running into it, and I'm like, that sounds like a disaster.
It
To
can
your
be
point,
scary, yeah.
one of the benefits of building this essentially game for brands on chain is between the brand, there's this progressive relationship built over time. So, and that becomes, you know, the gamification of it becomes fun, where I'm earning my way in, let's say, to product testing opportunities as I continue to contribute on a consistent basis. And so, really on the brand side, how you can start to de-risk that is seeing from day one who are your most engaged, most trusted users, and then bringing them into kind of the higher value opportunities.
Yeah, I think to answer your question about like where 5, 6,
Yeah.
why are we doing this 5, 10 years from now? I mean, I think that you really have to believe that the new Web3 paradigms is where things are going to land. So whether that's identity, you know, it's decentralized identity, how are you going to verify yourself, how are you going to verify what you own? How does a brand or any really creator or anyone engage in CRM activities that are going on right now in terms of understanding user behavior, analytics around that? You have to believe that cryptocurrency at some level is going to be the payment rails of everything. And then you have to believe that at some point, ownership and sovereignty of your information is going to be the norm. And that's what people are going to expect. So I think this run up to this 5, 10-year vision that many people in this industry are attacking from different angles is something that you have to have a core belief in order to even engage in this space. So brands, you know, let's face it, brands are here benefiting from the Web2 paradigm, right? We can all be honest and say that. But they are also, there's also a lot of obstacles getting into Web3 from a normal consumer basis. You know, if you talk to your mom, talk to your, I don't know about you guys, but when I go to dinner parties, nobody ever understands anything I'm talking about. So just as simple as, how do I get somebody engaging in a Web3 experience? How do I make that UX as simple and as comforting as possible? And it is going to take brands and the culture makers of now that are going to bring people into the future. So, I think that that's at least the angle that we're taking, and we building tools around making that easy, creating Web 2.5 to like really ease people into. I love progressive decentralization, and how do we do that? Because the future is that. That's 10 years from now. That's everyone being their own brand, owning their own identity, figuring out who they want to engage with, giving away data when they want to, and when they do, they're monetizing it, engaging, co-creating with brands, and actually being part owners of it without being, equity holders and going to the stock market and buying stocks in certain brands or certain sort of cultural identities.
I also see, just with the younger kind of Gen Z community in particular, they're already to a place where pushing like on an Instagram post is not interesting anymore, and want the ability to opt in and then have their time and attention rewarded. And so it's already starting to happen. We need more use cases in this NFT. We don't even use the word NFT in what we do, but there's been so much speculation, and crypto looks so one way, that we need more of these use cases going live that actually provide value at the end of the day, even if we're, crawling, walking, and then running over time.
Yeah, and on the topic of co-creation, Rocky, I have a question for you. I think Hume, which is a metaverse record label, they are partnering with CAA, which is one of your clients. So for those who don't know, Hume, they basically kind of have this co-creation opportunity where you can vote for certain artists, vote for an artist and Angel Baby, and vote for songs for that to be co-created. It's very cool. How do you guys think about CAA working with some of these crypto native IP brands, and how do you see that kind of evolving?
Yeah, so they're also on our board. So we, they are very progressive in I think the way that they think about it. But fundamentally it makes sense, right? So what does CAA do? They're tastemakers in culture. They rep artists, they rep sports teams, they rep brands. They have a pretty large branding arm that's quite active. And when you think about Hume and what they're trying to do, they're trying to create these characters that are going to be the new influencers in the Web3 space. So the marriage makes perfect sense. I think CAA is very bullish on Web3. They've done a lot of great things in this space, including investing in us. It's a marriage that we think made perfect sense when it was announced.
Cool. And to switch gears a little bit about sports, Porter, I think, would love to get your thoughts on what you think the role of Web3 as you think about kind of the future of sports. I think in the early innings we saw, NBA Top Shop, right, So Rare kind of take form, but what do you think about the next iteration? We're beginning to see some things like Link style with karate, fan-controlled football and sports. How do you kind of see Web3 evolving as it relates to fandom, engagement, teams?
Yeah, so I think this may be an unpopular opinion, but I'm not incredibly sort of bullish long-term on just like the strictly collectible highlights moments market. And I think this goes to what Ty just said. I think the past 2 years kind of fooled a lot of people and maybe all of us into thinking that a lot of the behaviors we were seeing were consumer behaviors that were new and were here to stay forever. And I think now you have actual consumer behaviors with the companies that are left. So now that the market has come down, now that a lot of noise has been washed out of the industry, we're left with the people who are still standing and new companies that are springing up, and you're saying, oh wow, there's real engagement there. Or this company has pivoted and doubled down on something that is working and they have real attention, real engagement. Let's pay attention there. So I think when it comes to sports specifically, the average sports fan is not the average crypto native person, and that's something that we have to be incredibly aware of when it comes to relevancy and engagement. So what I'm most excited about is, okay, what is a current existing sports business or sports behavior for consumers that could benefit with on-chain authentication? Like, keep it very, very simple. So I think, fantasy sports is the obvious one. I think what Sorare is doing is amazing, and they have similarly started to abstract away a lot of the NFT language, and it's really just about, okay, fantasy sports is something everyone does. Now there's real ownership tied to your teams. Now there's real ownership tied to your players. Swoops is another one that's up and coming that is really cool because they're actually not tied to any league or team. They're building their own league and their own teams and their own, virtual athletes with real ownership, and I think that's fascinating. I think the big one at some point is, when is there going to be a decentralized betting exchange? Yeah. It's hard for me to get excited about that because I think generally sports gambling creates a lot more harm than good, but that is going to come at some point and it is going to have a massive market.
I have a question on that. And I live in Tucson, so right on the U of A campus. What do you think, have you guys given much thought to the NIL kind of by player piece of this?
Yeah, so do you want us to go ahead?
No, that was my next question.
So we are, our company exists regardless, but it doesn't exist in its current form without NIL. So we founded Mercury, and then 2 months later, the Supreme Court ruling came down that allowed athletes to monetize their name, image, and likeness while in school. So what we do is, what we've found actually is it's now incredibly simple, not easy, but simple, to align incentives between the university, the athletes, and the fans. Fans want to get closer to the athletes. They want more access. They want to get closer to the teams they love. They want more access. Athletes just want to make money now. Like, they're in college. They can make money. They want to make money. And the universities want their athletes to make money, so they stay on campus. And they want to deepen engagement with their current fans. So we're trying to create these hyper-local brands. We're actually in the business of building brands at each one of our schools, leveraging the fan base of the university and leveraging the NIL value of the athletes, which we use to create content, create experiences, and hopefully create relevancy and attention.
Cool.
I guess on that note, general consumer sentiment has waned on crypto, NFTs, right? How have you guys each, I think all of our thesis remains aligned on the long term of kind of the power of Web3, but in the short term, how have your conversations and thesis changed as it pertains to your immediate consumers, right? As they look at what's on the news, and as well as the brands or sports teams, colleges, universities, large brands, D2C companies that you're working with, and how have those conversations been like?
So they haven't changed much in the sense of the vision or the campaigns that people are trying to run. I think they're still doing that, but the conversations have definitely shifted into governance models, into compliance, into security. So, especially dealing with larger brands and enterprises that have, very large compliance and legal departments. So I have to say I've had probably more conversations with compliance and legal departments than, the CMOs and the business people. But, that's the reality of where we are, right? And I've been in conversations where I think people try to dissociate, well, we're not crypto, we're not crypto, which is true, but it's kind of saying, if tomorrow all the banks defaulted in the world, what would happen to e-commerce sites, right? What would happen to commerce in general? The fabric of everything we're doing is still cryptocurrency based, and there's no walking away from it. So when something like FTX or, other things happen, it impacts us. And I think that, thinking about compliance and security and custody, these are the boring and conversations that are going on, but we need to have them and we need to address them head on. And that's what we're seeing a lot of.
With the conversations that we're having today, the headline issue is CAC has exploded. We haven't focused enough on how we're going to keep the customers we have with us. And so what comes up every day is there's no go-to retention or loyalty solution. And so we've learned not to go ahead in or lead with anything blockchain related, but rather minimize and focus on here's your kind of all-in-one owned community channel where you can coordinate and reward your customer base, automate and scale those rewards, and then make community measurable. And so it's very much lifetime value focused, and that's in every combo we have, like what's very top of mind. So in that way, like it's the perfect timing for this type of toolkit, but we have to very much evolve kind of how we're speaking to it. I think with Starbucks Odyssey, their rewards program, and then Nike.Swoosh, those have been huge tailwinds. Even kind of in Q4, 50% of our combos were like, we're interested or we're not. And like as of January, having those kind of, part of the Q4 narrative coming off the FTX like shit show, it's been very helpful. And we're now signing 1 to 2 brands a week because this is such a core issue and people are not interested anymore in spending all these dollars on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, I think for us, so we have a little more leeway. So we partner with the universities, we partner with the athletes, and in exchange, like we get to use their marks, we get their marketing power, and we get the athlete rights, and we create content with the athletes. But we have leeway in terms of strategically where we go, and it's more of us making recommendations, which gives us a little more power, which is great. But it's also it's on our shoulders to not screw it up. So the biggest thing we noticed this fall was we were going more to more of an experiential model. Mainly for engagement and attention at this sort of like stage of our business at the end of last summer. But what we were finding was similar to what Ty is describing. We would say, hey, buy this NFT and get this awesome experience. You get to, you're a Clemson fan, you get to go down to campus and you get to run routes for the star quarterback. Any fan would want that. That's real. No one else can get that anywhere else. And the second we said, buy this NFT, they were hanging up the phone. And we were like, I'm about to send you to do you want this thing? But like they can't even hear that. They hear blockchain, they hear Web3, they hear crypto, and they're like, this is a scam. I'm just a sports fan. I'm in the wrong area of the internet. So simultaneously, our actual, like the more crypto native fans, when interviewing them and talking to them, what we were finding was they were buying our collectibles, our NFTs for the utility. They were like, I'm buying this. I don't care about the thing. I just care about the utility. So we were like, okay, let's not put this thing in the middle here. Let's not confuse the messaging and cut out an entire swath of the market. The people want the experience. Let's just sell them the experience. Keep the market as large as possible. Keep the engagement and the audience as large as possible. Bring people in. Sell them this experience. Don't tell them about NFTs or Web3. And then when they go to campus and they have that awesome experience, and then 3 weeks later, we drop a little memento onto their profile that signifies, hey, you had this experience. It's verified on-chain, and you can flex it and show it off forever. And they might care about that, awesome. They might not care about that, doesn't matter. Either way, they had the experience, and they're gonna build that profile over time, and then maybe some of them step back after a year, and they're like, oh my goodness, this is my life as a Villanova fan over the past 2 years. Now I get it. Now I get why this is important. But we can't say this is important now and try to convince them, because I think it's actually a really scary time or a dangerous time to have education as any part of your strategy. With attention spans at whatever it is, 6 seconds and shrinking, You can't be like, stop and let me educate you on this thing. They need to see something they like, go get the thing they like, and then the technology needs to power it.
Yep, and I think there's almost like three cohorts of users. You have your crypto native, right? And then you have your crypto curious, which I think a lot of people in the room here today. And then you have your mainstream consumers who don't really have a MetaMask today, don't care to custody anything on chain. And I think what's interesting about the whole Starbucks Odyssey thing is 6% I read of all the NFTs that were being minted or custodied on chain, and all that, the rest was all from mainstream consumers. So I think you're beginning to see companies abstract away the complexities, kind of offer the experience, and be able to deliver it that way.
Yeah, just on that, like the thing we did for the Bucks last year, which was a membership drop to get VIP access, to tailgating and stuff. That it was over 95% non-Web3 users. Didn't know they had a wallet, didn't know they were getting an NFT, to your point. Everything was abstracted away, and then they got, drops, and some of them were excited, some of them didn't care, so that's exactly right.
Yeah. I guess in terms of loyalty is a big theme as well for all of you guys, right? Like I think loyalty for a fandom, loyalty for brands. How do you think, what are new loyalty models that Web3 powers that you can supercharge either a community in ways that people can't do right now in Web2?
Yeah, interoperability of loyalty rewards becomes really interesting over time. Again, that's what I consider kind of the second phase. We first need the users and brands kind of in this ecosystem and interacting. And what that looks like is for brands that opt in, let's say a Parade Underwear and an Urban Outfitters, people who earn Parade coins can go transfer those for an Urban Outfitters coin. And in the same way, people who have earned status by progressively kind of building this trust, and their collectible essentially represents, access to a private channel, can then go lease out or sell this collectible, which on the end user side becomes quite attractive over time. But again, can't underestimate how simple we need to keep it now, and all that we're focused on is this first phase called new loyalty, where we're introducing coins and collectibles and then the perks associated with that ownership, and really focused on, this is your new version of the doing things hat, and really from a status perspective, that's almost the only thing we're focused on right now. It's very, very simple and minimized.
Yeah, it's similar to Mercury, right? You give the experience up front. On the back end, you're building something on crypto rails, and in the future, depending on whether or not this person wants to custody something on chain, participate more in Web3, they can kind of choose to.
Yeah, I think the interoperability is it's amazing. I mean, just for me, coming from a more of a trading background, it's great. I could, tomorrow I could exchange my Amex points for, that mug I want to buy on Amazon. All these things are made possible once we kind of this gets big and everything gets going. The other thing that we were talking about the other day is we have credit score now, right? Which a centralized entity maintains. But as people engage more with Web3 business natively on chain, they're building up their consumer score, their fan score, their ability to drive brand score, and you might have now a new influencer model where brands are coming in looking for people with these scores because they know that they have the power to build community in a new way. So there's just so much green space once you get past that critical mass. That's all we're looking at, getting past that critical mass.
I also loyalty today very much sucks. It's these little disparate, coin collections that don't ultimately get redeemed. And so for this to be kind of a new way where, it really benefits the end user, that my loyalty across these brands gets me kind of more optionality and will increase the probability that I'm going to go kind of use those discounts or perks. And I think from a brand perspective, being more collaborative in the way that you're thinking about growth is going to be a more effective and efficient model than today, where we're driving CAC up by all again spending on the same channel. So we're starting to model kind of this interoperability by essentially putting together synergistic brands that aren't competitive, let's say in the parent space, around a go-to-market moment where they can kind of cross-pollinate with, their different audiences that will learn kind of through the ecosystem about, another similar brand but not competitive. And so again, the blockchain becomes a really kind of elegant way of doing this over time that we get quite excited about.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add is, in terms of making things simple, loyalty is like just such an obvious use case of, okay, this is something that exists now that isn't as good as it could be, that would benefit tremendously from on-chain authentication. And I think a lot of companies don't have to necessarily change their North Star or how they get there. And it can be a sort of net benefit to their community and to their audience that doesn't require education and hopefully doesn't require spending on paid advertising to educate people to then send them to this new thing. And then it's like, this was supposed to be cheaper and now it's actually twice as expensive.
I also love thinking of the starter pack memes, and I think that also from a consumer standpoint is where we're headed, where wallets replace cookies in a lot of ways. And so someone could have, I don't know who's the best on the Rock Chalk Jayhawks. Anyway, Kirk Carissa on U of A, like his collectible, and then a Fallen Grapes wine collectible, and a Nike collectible, and that becomes a really interesting way to think about marketing in the future is these kind of interest-based audience opportunities versus what we, literally tracking someone through cookies kind of on the internet today.
And with cookies and data today, most consumers don't own that, right? They're not getting the share of what companies are selling to that. So with ownership, kind of we talked about, and having your wallet, you'll be able to better target a lot of consumers, and they'll be able to get a cut of it, right? As you think about. Cool. We'd like to open it up to the audience for questions, if anyone has, for the panel.
Hey Porter, so my name's Arham. I ran a fan engagement platform for athletes too. We had Tony Ferguson on board for a bit. So familiar with the fan engagement space, but I'm really curious hearing all three of your description of where the space is going. Web 2.5, seamless user experience, a lot of endpoints, collectibles that unlock real utility. In the tech stack, other than the end consumer, what really differentiates these three companies and how you're approaching this?
I mean, the three of us, how do we differentiate between each other?
What differentiating factors in the technology? What's different with these fan engagement or customer loyalty startups that are based in Web3 Rails?
Yeah, so I think for us, look, our technology is not going to be any better than theirs, or technology will not be our sort of calling card. I think at the end of the day, I'm not one that believes that knowing all 10 chains, 12 chains, however many there are in X amount of years matters. I think, again, a lot of this is just going to be the same way cloud infrastructure is everywhere, but every brand isn't talking about it. E-commerce is everywhere, but every brand isn't talking about it. I think blockchain technology is going to exist and be integrated into so much of our daily consumer lives. So for us, our calling card is going to be attention and relevancy. So where we're trying to go, to sort of point to what you said on fan engagement, the technology we're trying to build, sort of tracking that fan identity over time, that's all well and good. But if you actually really want to do that at scale, then you need to essentially go to ESPN and say, hey, can we plug this into everything you're doing? All your events, all your broadcasting, everything you're doing, merchandise, collectibles, engagement, content. And they would say, no, who are you? So essentially what we have to do is we have to build a media company to start. And we need to own attention. We need to own the experiences, own the events, own the merchandise, own the collectibles, own the engagement. And if we own that and have that ecosystem, then we can do whatever we want on the back end. And we can see what works for our fans and for our community. But I don't know, to me, picks and shovels are all well and good, but you have to make sure there's gold to dig. Otherwise, it's not useful to anyone. And where we are, we're trying to build a lasting, sustainable business, so we need attention now. So we're less focused on technology at the forefront of what we do. We are trying to own engagement, own attention, and then we'll back the technology in to meet those needs. I don't know if that answered your question, but.
We think of our platform as the engagement layer of the commerce stack. And so right now, I call it automated community social proof. We use the tech to essentially scan and verify that collectible holder tagged this brand on TikTok, automatically give them rewards in their wallet that then can be redeemed at a Shopify checkout or a Demandware checkout. And so pretty nicely, same thing can happen with reviews, Okendo. So we've really kind of tethered to all of these different integration points within kind of the commerce stack solution.
Yeah, I'd say for us, 'cause since our focus is enterprise brands, so when we're talking with sports teams, like to your question, it's with it's with the sport franchises and maybe not individual teams as much. So I'd say our tech stack is more focused on payment rails, compliance, and other matters that help activate this at an enterprise level. So of course, I think like with everyone here, there is smart contracts, there are APIs. And ways for you to build on our tech stack, but what we're finding is that's not enough to activate it at an enterprise level. We need like insurance, we need other aspects of things that cover our offering. Like for example, we're merchant of record for a lot of our enterprises, which means we take the liability of any transactions going wrong, any fraud. So to do business in the space of, let's say, an enterprise client, there is other infrastructure that's needed besides tech as well. So I think, but I think at some level, blockchain tech and Web3 tech is open source, and I agree with Ty. That's not going to be the thing that differentiates as much over time, especially.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank y'all.
So one question I had is kind of the misalignment of incentives as a consumer, because let's say I go to Urban Outfitters and I get some loyalty points off a one-time purchase. I'm kind of locked into this siloed system to utilize those at Urban Outfitters, causing me to be like a recurring customer if I want to get the value out of those. In a Web3 world, I may be able to sell that for 50 cents, $1, and I kind of exit that brand's ecosystem. So I'm just curious how you guys think about and kind of build your products around these incentives of, hey, it's great to be able to create financial value out of these loyalty points, but at what cost does that come at if we were to potentially lose this recurring customer by not being locked in? And kind of, I see all the benefits of you build a stronger customer if they stay and kind of build up this profile or stuff like that, but it does seem like there's an internal battle for keeping these customers.
In the data that we've looked at, 85% of loyalty rewards or points are not being used today. So it's an ineffective tool. So I think like that is the first step, is can we increase the usage of loyalty points to drive incremental revenue, repeat purchases, et cetera. But so I think that's a great question over time. We'll see how that plays out. Because certainly, like if Nike's reading a wallet that someone just bought from Adidas and then can go airdrop them discount points, like that can be potentially competitive. So, but really, it's moving that 85% number to something where people are actually using their loyalty points.
Yeah, and the interoperability that I think Ty was talking about earlier, that's the solve for what you're talking about, right? So your Urban Outfitters, you can exit that ecosystem, but you don't have to exit it. You can then go to the parent company of Urban Outfitters, other brand, and use it there. And so that interoperability comes because we're building it on chain. I think we're doing a lot of stuff with EVM chains, and so whether it's Polygon or Ethereum, there are bridges between now these chains, so you can exchange your points. In the future, there could be a DEX for loyalty points. I mean, that's something we've contemplated looking at as well, where regardless of the brand, you can come in and just go just like going to Uniswap and swap out your Urban Outfitter points for your Nike points, for example, and those are all possible outcomes. Definitely, loyalty as it stands now is a broken system, and it sits on. And from a brand perspective, actually, it's also not that great, right? Because these loyalty points sit as liabilities on a brand's books, and they are trying to reduce them. They're trying to do stuff to like get you to use them because they're kind of liabilities on their books. So brands don't want that either. They're this idea of locking somebody in and not having them utilize it is no good for anybody. Yet here we go, you know. So that needs to change.
I think for us, so two things. So we're trying to build loyalty, though not through like a technical loyalty program at each one of our school brands. So, you know, Rock Chalk is for Kansas fans, Boomer Sooners are our brand for Oklahoma fans, the Paws is Clemson, and we have kind of like a long-term rebundling strategy where to start it's like let's target the fans at a hyper-local level, let's build engagement, let's build loyalty, and then down the line we can have a larger area or space above all of that where they can redeem said points that they earn for larger national level, global level experiences and rewards. But for us in like the short term, I think the biggest thing that the past year might have taught us was I think it's really critical for us specifically, I don't know about everyone else, to remove financial incentives from everything that we do. I think given what happened with FTX, I think given what happened with, you know, name whoever else you want, Terra, Luna, et cetera, removing financial incentives almost guarantees that the people that are there for the right reasons. And that is so critical for us as we try to build a business, not just an idea. So removing the financial incentives and making sure that, okay, people are here because they're fans and they want to be here, not this guy's here because he doesn't care about the brand, but he actually thinks there's an opportunity to make a quick buck.
We've also introduced or created the optionality for brands to create a friction point in terms of you have to earn your way into the community, which ultimately gets the right people in there. So I agree with that.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is very enjoyable. Dory Desatel Brody, this question is coming from the perspective of 10-year litigator, 5 years as an artist, last year as a one-of-one NFT artist. And my question specifically is for Rocky. I wondered if the recent Hermes decision would, in your opinion, impact both the role of creators and artists in Web3 space, as well as collectors, and if so, how?
Yeah, so IP ownership is a hot topic for sure. I think that you know, in the wake of the like we see what's been happening with you know, with the apes and things like that. So IP ownership and brand ownership and copyright, that is definitely a nascent area still that we deal a lot with. So we were having a conversation with Disney, for example, and what this is leading to is it's introducing fear at that level where people are closing up into walled garden type of you know, activations. We specifically as a brand are, you know, at some point you have to pick a lane. So we specifically are not for the walled garden, you know, approach. We think that is a not for the right reasons. You know, it will get you there because you want to be on chain, or, you know, it'll get your brand there, but it's not going to be for the right reasons for the brand. It's not going to be the right reasons for the consumers 100%. So I think it's a great question. It's an evolving question. I'd love to talk to you more after this. But, you know, whether who owns the IP, then you have other interesting questions around like AI being introduced now into this technology and generating art, who actually owns it, and what does ownership mean? And this is a very philosophical question, I think, when we get into Web3, and one of the areas where I think legal and blockchain professionals are going to come and have many debates for many years. But it's a topic that comes up, especially when you're talking about brands like Hermes that have owned their brands for hundreds of years, right? So it's hard to get let go of that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think there's a question in the back.
Thank you, guys. One of you mentioned that the cost of customer acquisition is skyrocketing, and that's something that I've heard from a number of founders in this space. So, would just love to hear your perspectives on what's driving that and why that is.
Yeah, of course. The equation that people need to be focused on is customer acquisition costs to lifetime value. And so as it's become easier to create a brand, everyone can essentially create a brand with a Shopify, et cetera. Now there's all of these brands competing for the same eyeballs, and it's getting that much more expensive to go essentially convert those eyeballs into customers via the channels that have, been, most popular over the last 10 years. So very simply, that's the answer. Does that make sense?
I think one way I think about it is if you think of all the social channels, and as the cost of publishing has really gone down to zero, think how many times you could tweet or post on Instagram in a given day or an hour, and now multiply that by the amount of people that are on Instagram. So all these platforms are so content saturated and more saturated every single day. Whereas in the early days of TikTok, there was more users than content. So if you posted something, it was going to get thousands of eyeballs, if not more, because there were more people on the platform than content. Now there's more content per person, and it's growing every single second. So the cost to acquire those eyeballs is also growing essentially every single second.
And also, I think a huge part is like Facebook, Google, they're taking, I think, 70% of all advertising costs, right? That's a huge chunk. As a result, they can kind of jack up the prices. So kind of with platforms like what you guys are all building, enabling co-creation, better models for loyalty, it's fundamentally reducing that and developing the more one-on-one relationship with the consumers, whether that be in the form of like being part of the community or being part of the fan engagement platforms.
I think the tough thing there is you still have to find the audience, you still have to find the customer. So you can deepen engagement once you find them, but you still have to find them and get them in. So it's still a challenge.
What do you guys think about the new Web3 social, social platforms?
Have you guys, anyone here seen Friends with Benefits? I mean,
Their new app.
it's amazing. I think you had asked me earlier, like, what's the most exciting project in kind of Web3 consumer? It's a community-owned social network, and Friends with Benefits has done such a great job, and I think they did just come out with this app, but, I mean, the foundation and just kind of philosophy behind that is so perfect. Everyone who's contributed to the community thus far has stake in the game. They own FWB coins. It's interesting because it's very much private, so it's not, like, at this point, the accessibility is limited because I think you have to have 75 FWB tokens, which I don't know what that equals right now, but it's many thousands of dollars. But very, very impressive and worth for this group checking out.
Yeah, I saw that 2 days ago, and I would like throw it right in the pool suite category of something that I saw, and I was like, I didn't want to get involved a year ago, and I'm like, now I wish I was. So
There's
check it
almost
out.
an emergence of like more crypto native brands and communities. Like Pool Suite is definitely one, FWB. On the brand side, it's like Super Plastic, Artifact, and I feel like that is like emerging versus like traditional brands coming in. So it's interesting to think about brands from both those.
Yep. The from zero opportunities once, go ahead. Over time, from zero, like from scratch, new brands is going to be the most exciting place to play. It's difficult, obviously, with retail, kind of, they're slow to the game in a lot of ways. So this is going to take time for existing kind of companies that are traditionally capitalized.
Yeah, last thing I would just add is I think that's like a cultural shift where you're going to see like these brands born out of Web3 and crypto culture, and the brands on the traditional legacy side that try to just have a Web3 strategy and say we want to enter Web3, I think they will fail. I think Porsche seemingly made a mistake. Who knows where that ends up? But right now it's just sort of one big mea culpa, and the legacy brands that did succeed were ones who said we have a strategy regardless, and this technology helps us achieve said strategy, like Nike and Starbucks, and just makes it better. So I think the combination of those brands on the legacy side that can integrate new technology to be innovative and help where they're trying to go, and then the sort of crypto native, Web3 native cultural brands that are emerging are going to be the sort of two groups of winners in the space long term.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.